welcome everyone. Really, really great to see all of you here. And let's get the party started. So today's topic is about how can product managers and UXRs, so whether it's designers or researchers, can really kind of collaborate with each other and help out each other. And for today's event, we have an amazing, amazing product leader, Rich Mironov. I'm sure all of you probably heard about Rich. Maybe you've read his book, maybe you've read his blog. Rich was one of the two people very, very early on in my career that I started following and reading something called Product Bites, which then converted into a book, The Art of Product Management. And it was something that just got me hooked into this field. So just very, very quickly, the agenda is we're going to be spending about 40 minutes or so learning from Rich about this particular topic. We'll open the floor for about 10 minutes of questions and answers with Rich. And then again, I will stay on for the next 10, 15 minutes after our event with Rich. If anyone has any questions about maybe getting your first PM role or a UX role, or maybe you are early in your career in PM and UX and you're trying to kind of advance to that next step, I know it is extremely challenging. I'm happy to kind of stay on and answer any questions. So just a little bit about PM Dojo. We are a global community. We have folks, both product leaders who are mentors in our community, as well as folks who are either early career in product management or UX, or perhaps they are interested to find their first role. They are mid-career professionals who are trying to kind of get into tech. We have teachers and nurses and marketers and engineers, people from all over the world in all different kinds of backgrounds who are trying to succeed and thrive in the tech industry. And that's really what PM Dojo is about. We're trying to make the tech industry more accessible and equal and creating opportunities for people to thrive in this field. How do we help our community? We run a lot of these free events on a regular basis. We have quite a few coming up. We have another one coming up for International Women's Day. We also have another event by a PM at Uber coming up in March. And then we also have our very unique product accelerator program. We really believe, and I'm sure that many of you can resonate, that no one can become a PM or a designer by just studying or reading or doing a certificate or doing a boot camp. You actually have to get to step into the role, because these roles are very subjective, and the reality, the real world, doesn't look like the case studies. So this is where the Product Accelerator in PM Dojo is all about, where you get to step into the role and work cross-functionally as a team with developers and designers and PMs, and you're learning live. And you actually launch a live product in 10 weeks while you get personalized coaching and mentorship. And we've had some amazing success rates, 95% fellow success rate, which is kind of completely unheard of. So these are the two ways that we really help. And I also coach a lot of PMs myself. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome, Rich. I'm so humbled and so grateful that we've been able to host you today. So with that, Rich, welcome. Welcome to PM Dojo. Over to you.
Great. And I'm going to steal the screen here. Here we go. And this will look suspiciously like what you've already seen. Thanks so much. Thanks, Bosky. And really excited to join folks. Let me jump right in. So just a little bit more about me. So I've been doing product management since the 80s. In case anybody thought product management was a new thing, not so much. Mostly software since the early 90s. I hung out my shingle in 2001 for a variety of economic reasons. So I've been solo now for more than 20 years. A lot of clients, and I've done a whole series of what we call the smoke jumper head of product job, which is some company forgot to have a head of product or misplaced their last couple, or the last 2 or 3 walked out the door and nobody knows why. So I've done a whole series of drop into a company for a couple of quarters, try to straighten it out, and then help hire my replacement. What's relevant here for this talk, maybe more, is that I have a very rare disease, which I call design blindness. My wife ran one of the very first digital ad agencies in San Francisco in the early 90s. And she and I would play this game where she would bring home 2 or 3 designs and show them all to me. And absolutely 100%, I would either pick the worst or not understand what was good about the best. So I bring a lot of humility to the question of UX and design because I can't do it myself. I've run teams that include designers, but I've always tried to be humble about trying to provide useful feedback. So that'll, I think, inform some of what we're going to talk about here. Good. There's a book. Anybody who doesn't have a copy of it, drop me a note. I'd be happy to send you the bits because they're mine. All right. So here's the sort of 4 things I want to click through. And this may be an Americanism in any case. Product these days has a lot more of a seat at the table with executives and decision makers than designers and UX folks do. So we'll talk about how to use that instead of how to be unhappy about that. Lots of stakeholders, which is how product managers grit their teeth and get through their days. We'll talk a little bit about how products are getting bigger and bigger. And what that means is that as a product manager, I may not know every single thing about every part of my product, certainly not the adjoining products. And then for anybody who's a designer, I'll let you figure out number 4. A little bit of context, though, before we jump in, because I know that some of you, or at least some of the folks who are listening, may be at agencies or contract firms instead of being the designers or researchers or UXers within a company that builds software for its own economics, for its own customers. I hope we'll be able to touch on that, but I think it's a slightly different problem when your agency wants to make your buyer happy, regardless of whether the good design is what the buyer wants. So in an agency setting, sometimes we're in a place where we have project or program managers pushing us to finish on time, as opposed to product managers who are pushing us to get something out in the market that a lot of people will ultimately use. So just take that as a thought. And then let's just go. There's my podium. Okay, so seat at the table. Here's the table. I don't actually know any of these people. Stock photo, right? But after decades of being some of the folks who sat outside the room while the executives made the choices or engineering made the calls, I think product managers are now, as a group, really getting into that inner meeting. We're driving strategy often, and pricing and packaging and discovery and all the good things that let us as product folks have more of a voice than we used to in the decisions that get made at the company. That's great. Honestly, I think we're another decade from where designers and UX folks as a group, as a rule, really are in the room when a lot of the decisions get made. So that's going to create a little bit of a power dynamic here that we as product folks have to understand and think about so that we can bring our UX and design partners with us as equal partners and equal citizens, even though they may not be in the room, right? So UX design isn't there yet. And by the way, I'm using these synonymously. I'm not trying to chop any finer detail between UX, not UI, and design. Everybody uses those labels differently, and I'm not going to get all obsessed about it. So I think one of the very first things that falls on the product side is that we as product folks need to help promote, merchandise, celebrate, applaud the good work that our design partners are doing. Because if you're not in the room where it happens, thank you, Hamilton, you may not be getting the approval or understanding or visibility that you deserve. And so when I wear my product manager hat on, I want to make sure that the great people on my team are getting credit for the great work they do. So that creates an obligation for me as a product person to make sure that when I show the design, I name the person who did it. I talk about why it's good. If we're gonna record a 2-minute video of it, I really want my designer to be the person who's walking it through. In the same way that when my engineers do something really cool, whatever that is, they're also not in the room to take the applause. So when we push the scalability of our system up where it's needed, I really want to name the engineering team that did it, right? Or whatever that piece of work is, so that I become a spokesperson for my team, not just the product person, right? So I bring my team into the room however it is that I can do that. Good. Let's keep going. The second thing here, a bit of learning from me over the years is how we talk to execs, right? And this is really important because how do I say this right? I were an engineer and I aren't one now, right? But I brought a lot of engineering point of view with me when I first started in product. And there was a lot of telling and teaching, and I'm the smartest person in the room. I got to tell you that when you sit down with an executive team, which is going to be mostly sales and marketing and finance and non-product engineering design folks, um, they're really not interested in my 4-hour description of how agile works, right? Or a deep dive into 57 pieces of tech debt, or for me to walk through my spreadsheet, which has 42 rows and 16 columns, to show them how I prioritize the work, right? On the engineering and design side, there's a lot of detailed discussion about how we get to answers, and we argue about things, and we're all friends. When it's time to give news to the executive team, we're talking about sound bites. We're talking about, no more than 2 sentences and no more than 9 words apiece, right? And show is always better than tell. So if there's good news that's come out of my team, particularly new design work or workflows that we've fixed, or we've gotten around some sign up issue, or we've done some piece of UX that matters, as a product manager wanting to share that news, um, a 30 or 60-second video of showing me what on the screen changed and why it's good, and maybe the 2 or 3 numbers that show that we got higher signups or lower churn or whatever, right, is way better than the 18-minute dissertation, right? This is the basics of know your audience, right? So as product managers, what we need to do is not just celebrate and merchandise the good work of our teams. We have to shrink it down and translate it and put it into the language that our audience can hear, right? Back in the hardware days, I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember that we used to talk about folks who have a stack depth of 1, right? If you're not a hardware person, I'll give you a hint. That means they can only keep one thing in their head at a time, right? And the second thing writes over the first thing. When we're trying to give good news here, let's show, not tell. Let's be brief. We're good on that one? All right, let's keep going. And by the way, this is what product managers do all day long in other settings, right? All day long, we're taking the features that we as a team built, design and engineering and product, and translating them into the benefits that people care about, right? We're taking the good outcomes and we're translating them into the economics of here's why you should pay us for our product, right? We're taking the data that we're analyzing out of our funnel and we're turning it into here's how marketing should reach the right people, right? So all day long as product folks, we need to understand that our different audiences hear in different ways, want different messaging, and have different attention spans. And with all humility, I'll tell you that almost every executive I've ever worked with, and myself when I've been in those jobs, we all have ADHD, right? We're getting pounded every 2 seconds by somebody who wants something and an interrupt and a new report and a deal we got to sign and all this stuff. So we product managers and we designers just aren't going to get enough bandwidth out of the executive team that they're really going to love deep explanations. Yes, thank you, Bosky. Cognitive overload. They just want the good news. What's the wow? Let's move on. So again, as product managers, we need to be constantly translating from the good things that happen in 17-page documents to the good things that happen in 2 sentences, right? And that's part of our job, to make our teams heroes, right? To make sure that everybody gets the goodwill and the promotions and the chance to work on neat stuff. Okay, let's keep going. I don't know if you've ever been in a stakeholder meeting. Here they are, right? I forget. I took it off of some TV show, right? But if you're a product manager, you know the following. You have 20 more stakeholders than you can even name or meet with. They each have they each have a short list of, let's say, no more than 90 things each that they want. And about 2/3 of them don't make any sense. And about half of them have nothing to do with what customers wanted, right? So as a product manager, I generally expect to get something between 20x and 40x the number of requests that my team and I can ever conceive of doing, right? So a lot of our job as product managers is facing down our stakeholders and explaining that they're not going to get what they want. Hint, that's not a very popular point of view, but it's part of our job. And so if you're on the design side and you're not seeing this mob of angry marketers and salespeople and finance folks and operations people and everybody else in your company camping outside the desk or near the desk of your product managers, this is an opportunity for you to thank your product manager for holding back the chaos. Right? This is what we do all day long. Somebody has a ticket for me. They send me an email or a Slack or the Post-it note or a Jira ticket or whatever other 15 ways we have to get stuff into the queue. And honestly, mostly I ignore it. And when I say no, um, the 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 folks who don't have a lot of political power in the company come back and say, well, I really need an hour for you to explain why you said no. And if they have any political power, they just escalate it to the CEO, right? We have a joke that says the definition of a millisecond is the time between when I tell my most important salesperson that he can have what he needs for his big account and when he forwards that on to the CEO to explain that I really don't know what I'm doing and the CEO needs to overrule me, right? So this is the daily exercise of product managers holding back the chaos, trying to keep on the roadmap for long enough to finish anything. And if you're not seeing that on the design side, a chance for you to appreciate what's happening, right? Okay, let's keep going. I want to do a little bit of pie chart work here because this is another tool I use with executives all day long. If there's anybody online here for a digital copy of my book, somebody can tell me what's absolutely special about pie charts versus all other kinds of charts. What's special about pie charts? Anybody know? Just take yourself off mute and jump in. Don't think too hard. Okay. The special thing about pie charts versus all other charts is that if you want to make one of the slices bigger, you have to make another slice smaller, right? This, by the way, is a thing that all executives hate because most executives live in the and world. And the and world means, yeah, do everything on the roadmap. And I just got off a call with a really big customer who needs us to do this thing. I'm sure there's space in the team and put it in next week's sprint and whatever. It can't be that hard, right? The and world is all about putting one more thing on the stack, right? The or world, where we all actually live, the exclusive or world says, if you want to add one more new thing in, we have to figure out what we're not going to do instead because the team is fully booked. Right. So that's important because when I talk sort of high level strategy, product strategy with execs, I start with this chart. And let me walk it through with everybody. On the left side, on the purple side, or you can choose whether that's lilac or I don't know what color is coming through for you. Again, remember my design issues here. If we're going to be in the B2B enterprise software space or really any software space, we're probably going to spend about half of all our energy on things that customers can see and want, right? So that's visible design improvements, that's faster performance, that's new data entries, that's a report they wanted, that's a workflow that makes life easier. It's some new feature that some big customer claims they're going to pay for, and therefore the sales team claims they're going to close a lot more deals. So on the left side is everything that comes in from the outside world, again through all these many challenges and channels of what people say they want. Not actually what they want, but what they say they want. The red slice here is all the things we have to do to stay in the software business, right? Security, yeah, security is kind of important, right? Especially when, you're a bank maybe, right? Or you're doing financial work. Architecture is important. Bug fixes are important. There's a lot of UX that's really important, but isn't so obvious. And so nobody asks for it by name, right? Better check-in tools, right? Anything having to do with how we're doing engineering and development. If we cheat on the red slice because we want a whole lot more features, we're going to put ourselves out of business. By the way, there's a behavioral equivalent here. Anybody know how a teenager eats an entire chocolate cake that's sitting on the counter in the kitchen? Don't
Gobbles
think
it up.
too hard. Sorry?
Gobbles it up.
Gobbles it up. Actually, not so much. So the right answer is every time he or she walks into the kitchen and grabs a fork and has just one tiny little bite of the cake, right? And it turns out by the end of the day, the cake is gone, right? And that's important here because we're going to talk for a moment about the blue slice, which in the enterprise space is somebody just got off the phone with a big customer and there's a deal in the works and they want this tiny little thing, which shouldn't be more than 10 lines of code. By the way, it usually turns out to be teleportation or something else that you can't do in 10 lines of code. And what's important is that the sales part of every software company has what we call roadmap amnesia and commitment amnesia. And what that means is as soon as this deal is closed and we promise to do this one little tiny thing that wasn't in the plan and may not have been a good idea, the sales team now understands because they escalated to the CEO. They now understand that the way to get deals closed is to throw something else in that the customer wants that we don't have. And by the end of the quarter, it turns out that that blue slice is 80% of the pie. And we got nothing done that we planned to do, and we didn't get fixes done, and we didn't do design work, and we didn't, right? Everything was sacrificed to one little bite at a time because sales doesn't keep score. So product has to keep score here and has to find enough executives who understand the pattern that when we run into that blue slice taking over the rest of the pie, we have somebody to go to who can push back, right? And that leaves our tiny little slice at the bottom, right? Which is the one I love the most. And if we as a company aren't spending 5 or 10% of our energy on real discovery, real validation, real user interviews, real economics, real, quantitative testing, A/B, whatever your kit is here, then we're probably building the wrong things. And half of this stuff is going to be wasted and thrown away, right? Now, the last time I did this talk, we had some long discussion about whether I want to call something validation or discovery or research. I don't care, right? Whatever we have to call it to make sure that the executives don't trade it away and let us do it is what we call it, right? And then the other part of this is the sort of frequent question of, well, who should do that? Should product do discovery and validation? Should design do it? If we have a separate research team, who should that do it? And again, I'm going to tell you that's not the right way to frame the question for me. What I tell my product managers all year long is if you're scheduling a call with a customer or a prospect or a partner, and it's a learning call, it's a discovery call, it's a validation call, you should have one of your design folks on the call with you, and ideally an engineer also. Now, good hygiene in interviews is only one person should be asking the questions. Well, who should it be? How about whoever is better at this, either the design UX person or the product person? I don't care, right? And the other two people should have a chat window open so they can ask good questions of whoever's driving. In general, I don't let engineers talk in these meetings because the things they say turn out to be really not ideal. That often the first time engineers will say, oh, that's a stupid idea, or let me tell you why you don't understand what you're doing, or oh, no problem, I can have you for that. I can get that to you on Friday, right? So until an engineer's been through a few of these and understands the social conventions, I usually keep them on mute. But I really want design plus engineering plus product to be on the call at the same time or in the room at the same time because we hear different things, right? We have different ears, we have different points of view. I don't actually care who runs the meeting as long as we all get to extract what we need to extract, right? On average, I see product folks leading these meetings, but again, I don't care, right? If you as a designer, as a UX, or as a researcher have a lot better skills here, then I want you running this call, right? Don't care. But what happens back to our blue and gray slices, when the blue slice gets bigger, the very first thing that gets thrown away is all the gray stuff, all the futures, all the validation, all the, are we building the right thing? And that's a shame. So as product folks, we need to fight every single day to make sure that we're not giving away the important parts of this pie for the less important parts. And if you're an individual contributor, I'll give you a hint. You don't have enough political juice to make that happen. So you need to run as quick as possible to your head of product and say, we're losing control of our team's investment here. I need you to fight for me, with me, to make sure we don't give it all away to the sales team for some random unplanned thing, right? This is as much politics as it is spreadsheets, right? Because nobody on the go-to-market side cares how we did this. They just each want what they want today. One more bite of cake. Okay, I'm going to take a breath here, and then we're going to roll forward. So you may see this as an analytical framework. I see it as a political problem. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so on the left, what customers and execs lobby for is more planned features, right? We're gonna, just for this 1 month, we're gonna do all purple, and we're gonna not do any red. That's equivalent to I'm gonna start my diet next week, or I know I should go to the gym every week, and I'm going to start going to the gym next week, but this week I'm going to sit around and eat bonbons, right? So customers lobby for planned features, execs lobby for planned features. The sales team at the same time wants you to do all the things that the customers ask for one at a time. Engineering turns out to be the folks pushing hardest for good infrastructure. Sometimes UX, sometimes ops, sometimes support, right? So who are the folks who actually push all day long so that we do good validation? It's pretty lonely. Mostly it's just us. It's product and UX folks and the occasional engineer. Nobody else appreciates this. So that's why we as product managers and product leaders have to push so hard to make sure that we're doing good discovery and validation. My data suggests that about half of what every software company ships is worthless and useless, not because we did a bad job, but because nobody cared and nobody wants it. So the pitch I make to execs is the reason we do validation and discovery is because we can get 30, 40% more useful value out of our team without hiring more people by doing our damn homework. All right, so let's keep going. All right, regardless of who you are, right, empathy is a really strong word here. I'm a strong believer that UX is really important. It's really a priority. But most of the people in your company don't understand it, don't appreciate it, don't have any idea what it is. It's easy to mistake real UX and UI and design work for button coloring, right? Because that's what they all talk about, right? Hey, my neighbor has a kid, he's 8, he's got a set of markers. Can't we just do that? I know that product has to help sell the value of design, or people aren't going to hear about it, right? Let me just go back for a second, right? So, and that's a lot of empathy on the design side. Please understand that your product managers probably aren't designers and don't know as much about this as you do, and you're going to have to use small sentences that they can repeat when they're out selling and merchandising and applauding your work, right? Have the empathy to understand that your product managers are busy doing other things and may not be completely understanding everything until you explain to them in small words. On the other side, on the product side, how do we ask for what we need in order to do this merchandising, right? Okay, so third thing, almost every product I know is too big. It has too many features. It has too many target audiences. It's got all these ugly things stapled around the edges that we never should have done. There's a lot of surface area to every product. And product managers are expected to know it top to bottom, end to end, right? All the details up to all the zooming up to value, right? So one of the reasons to put here is that as a designer, you should have a bit of empathy for your product managers because you may understand some of the workflows or implications or what matters here better than they do. It's not because they're bad product managers, because they're pulled in 57 directions. So, have a thought, be generous, explain it 3 times if they've got an ADHD and they've missed it, right? On the other side, product managers, we may not know as much about parts of the product as our design team does. Say it out loud, applaud them for it, thank them for it, and learn what we need to learn, right? Empathy is my key word here. All right, let's keep going. You guys, I don't know, age brackets here, but for those of you old enough to remember the movie, right? Product folks can be annoying. It's not because we go out of our way to be annoying. It's because we are juggling an awful lot of things, many of which the design team doesn't see, right? Part of our job every day is to let the rest of the team continue to work on what we've agreed is most important in the face of executives who had really good ideas in the shower this morning or just got off customer calls. So know that sometimes we're a little hard bitten and a little short tempered because we're doing a bunch of things that we hope you don't have to see. Right. So there's the smile, there's the cap gun, right? We are constantly getting interrupted. If you look at all those incoming requests, on average, I see 30 or 40 a day at my product managers. Gosh, that makes me tired, right? So in general, the behavior is not about you. Cut them some slack, right? Let's keep going. And then I'll get to the questions because I see some really good ones here. All right, some takeaways. Hint, anybody who missed that, that's a takeaway container on the right. Okay, so we're a team, right? I don't care. When we're working as a team, I don't really care who had the great idea. I want us to, as a team, figure out how to solve it. As a team, get good things out. On the other hand, once we've gotten there, I, as a product manager, want to celebrate my team. And often I'll call out people by name or by department because of the good work they're doing. Right. So we're a team. Try not to let the rest of the organization tear us apart or set us against each other. Right. Deep versus wide. Product managers tend to try to be both deep and wide. Designers, UX folks tend to be more deep than wide. So notice that we've got different points of view. We're slicing the problem differently. We're thinking about it differently. It's not that we don't respect each other. It's that we bring different talents and different point of view, and we want to get to the best answer, right? As a product manager, I need to merchandise the good work my design team does, or nobody's going to know. Good design work is often invisible, right? You got a bunch of blockers out of our sign up flow and people are getting through 45% faster. That's something to celebrate, right? Can our users see it? No, because we removed all those obstacles, right? So how do we celebrate? How do we merchandise, right? And then the last one is assume good intent, right? Everybody, even your salespeople, everybody's trying to do the right thing. Bring your best self to work. Try to cut everybody some slack. Be empathetic. If somebody's in trouble or acting out, go ask them how you can help. Right? That's for all of us because we're all trying to do the right thing from our own points of view, from our own skill set. And yeah, there's a couple of folks in your organization who aren't nice. Let's work them out and give them to some other organization. But almost everybody you work with is trying their best. They're bringing their best self, and you don't know what's going on in their day. So when something goes wrong, try to use the we word, right? We need to figure it out, and we're going to help. All right, that's me. That's one of my office managers. The other two didn't show up. I don't know why. Um, if you see my website there's 22 years worth of posts and tools and talks and templates and whatever. Please take anything you want. It's all there for the taking. And if I can be of help, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm the only person with my name. All right, so let's go back. Do we want to leave this up and do some Q&A? You're on mute, Bosky.
There you go. My
Okay.
dog decided that he has to contribute to this this event today. So I have to mute myself.
we got two dogs here. One of them may lean in, but here's a question from a participant. What's your advice if my head of product doesn't want to deal with conflict and fight? Oh, that's a hard one.
I hear this a lot, and I was coaching a particular PM as well. And it's interesting that this question came up today, Rich.
Yeah.
So there seems to be every time, I think the question was, every time I go asking for help to deal with the political cloudiness,
Yep.
The head of product or my boss pushes that down to me for me to sort it out with my peers as opposed to actually
sure.
taking.
Good. So let me give you two answers. And the first one, I'm gonna start with the word privilege, because if you're in a product job and you have the privilege and good luck that you have some money in the bank and you have the economic engine that would let you go look for another job without leaving your kids hungry or losing your H-1B or anything else. If your head of product isn't fighting to get you the things you need, this is going to be a long and ugly road, right? That's their job. Now, not all of them know it's their job, but that's their job. If you're not getting the support for getting good decisions ratified and getting the right choices made, um, it may be time to dust off your CV and figure out where you're going to work that's better, right? One other thought there too, which is I would say half or more of the companies out there that I've worked with or for um, don't really have strong product teams and may not have strong leaders. So before you jump from company A to company B, I would do a bunch of background checks. I would call a couple of people at the company who aren't in the interview cycle and don't have decision-making authority, but you have some connection to, maybe through me. And I'd ask them a lot of questions like, how much support does the head of product give the other product folks? And did your CEO have a bad childhood? Right? Because if you go from company A to company B and you're in exactly the same problem because you signed on with another head of product who's risk averse or maybe came from sales, right? You won't have fixed the problem. And at the individual contributor level, you probably can't fix it yourself. So before you jump, make sure you're jumping someplace that's better. And you'll only know that by talking to folks inside who have no incentive to tell you anything other than the truth. Good. Let's see if we got some other
Yes,
questions
we
here.
do.
Go.
I can kind of, I think I
Please.
did receive a question as a direct message. I'm just going to ask that,
Go.
Rich. Just to add to, I think what you said, sometimes I've done this. I don't know if it's the best. I know that there's biases here, but I've also reached out to people who have recently left the company.
Sure. Absolutely.
I know that if someone has left, they probably have their reasons and they may not give me all positive things, but I think it's just important, I think, to have from the other side of the equation and just kind of understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's worth doing our homework. Uh, just imagine a product person who would launch a product without having talked to any customers, right? Not somebody who's going to work for me. Don't go to a company without doing a bunch of background research with folks used to be there, still there, whatever, that you have some kind of bond of trust with, or somebody you know has a bond of trust with. Again, it might be me. I'd be happy to make those connections because it's a really expensive mistake to go to a company, another company, and find out that it's not any better or maybe worse than the place you left. And
Yeah.
the odds are decent. So you know, do the kind of work, do the kind of discovery and validation work you would do for launching a new product around any company you might join. Harder for design folks to do because they may not have access to the right people, but there you go.
Absolutely.
Good. What else?
So yes, so the question then, a follow-up question to that one is there a perfect company? Because every company seems to have their
I
own.
haven't seen one, but I would say that this isn't a question of best practices or how you. I mean, nobody cares what's in a user story, right? This isn't about tools. It's about the personality profiles of the founders and the execs.
Yeah.
Right? There are companies with founders and execs who love the people who work for them, treat them really well, get them what they need, and delegate real authority to the people who know how to do the work. And there's some who don't. And you'll never be able to change their minds or their behaviors,
Yeah.
right? So I think of this much more, gosh, who is it? Tolstoy, right? The opening of Anna Karenina is that all happy families are the same, but every unhappy family has its own version of unhappiness, right? If you're going to go to a broken company, you're going to learn some really cool new ways it can be broken. All right, Megan's got a question there I'm going to leap into. How's that?
Yes.
Startups can be challenging experience when trying to advocate for good UX. Doesn't it mean they aren't worth working at, just more of an uphill battle? Um, I I actually think startups are wonderful. I did 6 of them, and 4 of them we file under good character building and good life lessons because nothing else came out of it that was financially relevant. But I love startups. There's a lot of learning. You get a lot done. Good startups have great team ethos, right? So if it's only 8 or 15 of you against the world, you really have a common enemy and you all work together and it's great. Startups where the leadership doesn't encourage that will fail immediately. But I think you learn a lot from startups and you learn how to advocate for good work. You learn how to do good work. You learn how to do good, fast work that's going to have high value and not get all fussy, right? And I would say that the visible parts of UX really matter to startups. So if we're early stage, let's imagine we're in some consumer product some consumer space where we're trying to get more people to sign up for our, you know, our yoga classes, or we're building something that's going to help people find where recycling happens in their neighborhood. I don't care where it is, right? If you're doing good quantitative analysis on the behaviors, right, you can see where they're getting stuck in the workflows. You can see where they can't complete the actions. You can see where nobody can find the export button because you put it below the fold, whatever it is, right? And your startup is going to be excited by you leaping in there and fixing it and making it better and making the numbers better and the conversions better and the users happier, right? Um, in some ways, it's easier to do good UX work at a startup because everybody's pulling together to have success. The bigger the company, the more we divide roles and we say, well, research is different from UX, is different from UI, is different from some other 15 things we call it, right? And we have different departments and they have to have meetings to agree on priorities, right? On the other hand, big companies have money, they're stable. You don't have to worry about being out of work next month when funding doesn't come through. So there's trade-offs. But I loved my startup time, and that's where I really learned how to appreciate the designers on my team. Okay.
Rich, there's one question that's come as a DM to me. Are you okay?
Go. Go.
So the question is, what have you seen as the most successful from a reporting structure or org structure for a design team? Currently, our design team reports into product. I've also seen designers report into engineering, actually. That was interesting. So that's your first part, and I'll talk about the second part in a bit.
Okay. So I would break this into half. There's a scale question here, right? If there's only one or two designers in the whole company, they have to work for somebody, right? And I would say it's either product or engineering, depending on which of those two leaders has more empathy and understanding of design, right? If your product lead really understands what you're doing, then I would have those one or two designers working for product. If your product leader is design tone deaf and your engineering person's been through a lot of this, maybe it's engineering. There's one or two people's not enough to create a department, right? If you've got 9 folks in a design and UX department, or 6 or 12 or 20, I think they need their own org structure. They need a design leader who really is going to advocate and fight for what design needs. Sometimes that design lead works for product. Sometimes that design lead works for engineering. Sometimes it reports to the executive team, less so. But I think then we're in the sort of matrix model of teams are made up of engineers who are coming out of engineering and design who are coming out of design, and products is coming out of product, and DevOps that's coming out of DevOps, and maybe there's a tech writer or a automation engineer or a test engineer. So we're going to put teams together that are long-lived, and they're going to come from their departments, but they're really going to, their loyalty and their love first goes to their team, not to their function. And then they get together, that lets you have a sort of a community of practice around design where you can all talk to each other, learn from each other, share tools, make good decisions, have templates, have design, models, and then bring them back to your teams.
Hopefully that answered, I think, the question. If not, please unmute yourself and ask. The second part of the question is, what if your lead designer and or engineer is not engaged in discovery or participating in customer interviews? So this includes even the lead designer. Sure. As a PM, I currently conduct the interviews and share the notes after the designer I work with works across multiple products.
Okay. So that was that endpoint was the answer. So if you've got a fully dedicated designer on your team who's not participating in this, I have a lot of questions. I would start with, bribes and happy talk and pleading and free T-shirts and anything else I can do to get my designer on that call. I don't understand why a designer wouldn't want to be doing that, right? But you had the kicker at the end, which is if you've got one designer spread across 3 teams, I think that person is failing on their face. They can't possibly do a good job unless 2 of those teams are doing back-end APIs that no human ever touches, right? So what I'd say is, I don't think you have a participation in the interview problem. I think you have a staffing problem, right? And the right answer is to say, my team needs a designer. My team needs a full designer, and then that person is going to be enthusiastic about either leading interviews or joining interviews and teaching us things, right? Um, so in fact, there's a ratio I often kick over with engineers here, with executives. I say I need one product manager for every 8 to 9 to 10 makers, and a maker is an engineer, a designer, a DevOps person, a tech writer, everybody else who actually makes stuff that goes into the product. If I have a one product manager assigned to 20 people, I know my product manager is failing. And I apply the same theory to designers here, right? If you've got one designer spread across 2 or 3 or 4 teams, they're doing their best to limp along and not resign.
Mm.
So I don't blame that person for not showing up on the calls if they're not sleeping weekends. Go. We got time for maybe 1 or 2 more?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I can stay on for any
Sure.
questions that any aspiring PMs or designers have.
Okay.
Any questions for Rich?
I'm looking at the one Megan just typed in. It says, something I experienced was the pressure to cut out features that cut a lot of corners and resulted in more fires to put out. Okay. And I think that's bigger than a design question. I think that's a whole product question, because I would apply that same problem to, well, the engineers didn't have enough time to put in the resilience and scalability and failover, right? And the designers didn't have enough time to do a really good workflow that was going to get people to complete things. And the product manager had to give up 15 features that customers, sorry, my dog is about to interrupt here. Uh, so that's really short-term thinking. That's crappy thinking. Now, it makes sense if you're in a very, very early stage where, you're putting out early prototypes, you're trying to test in the market, it's not all going to work, nobody's paying for it, right? But if you're shipping paid products, yeah, design debt, great. If you're shipping paid products that have engineering debt and design debt and product debt, it's going to come back and bite you. And your customers are going to hate you and walk away, and your company's going to lose money and close its doors. So again, I would probably turn to my product manager to make this argument, because it's really unpopular and nobody's going to want to hear it. And that's somebody who probably has better, political skills around framing this up. Last thought there, and then I'll close it out. One of the things I coach my product managers all day long is, if you're talking to execs, they can only hear sentences that come out of your mouth that are denominated in money. No exec on the go-to-market side cares about tech debt. They don't care about design debt. They don't care about failure. They don't care about security until it bites them. They don't care about workflows. On the go-to-market side, if it's not denominated in money, nobody's going to hear you. So your product manager has to put the case together that our product's going to fall on the floor in 2 or 3 or 4 quarters, and people are going to hate us, and they're going to walk away and take their money with them. And that's why it's important. Right? Making any other case generally, for most executive teams, falls on deaf ears. So we as product folks have to translate from good design, great design, reducing tech debt, to why does the world care in financial terms. Now, that may be uncomfortable for folks, but that's how the world works. So again, as a product manager, you really need to be translating from the good work we do to the outcomes that the company wants. If you're not doing that, somebody else is having to make your case, or you're stacking up design debt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I would also argue that as designers, we need to have that business acumen, because rather than defending the design based on some heuristic, I think if designers are able to also explain the design decisions based on business acumen, I think it also helps PMs and the stakeholders.
Sure. Yes.
Awesome. I
Sorry,
know.
go ahead.
It's all good. It's all good. Rich, this was amazing.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Okay, good.
I think there's one more question. I don't know if you have time to answer
I
that, but
do.
one last question. Would you be okay?
I'm good to keep going.
Okay. How have you seen the field of product and UX design evolve over time? And what directions are you excited about this function in the future? Do you see design having more of a seat at the table in the future?
I do. I'd make the distinction between B2B companies and B2C companies. right? And again, I don't really know where to put agencies in here, but the B2C world has been a design world for the last 10 or 15 years, right? Led by Apple and all the other good design. People on the consumer side really care what their products look like mostly, and that they work, and that they're easy to use, and that people can complete their tasks, and that folks love them and refer them and yell and applaud, right? On the enterprise side, we're still in the place where VPs of some company buy a product and then they tell all their individual contributors to use it. So I'm not yet seeing that there's as much pressure to have great design in enterprise products as there should be, because the people who use it turn out not to be the people who buy it or make decisions about it. And in that case, often the lead people, the senior people at the customer, ignore all of the input from the people who work for them who use these applications because they don't really care. If you ever talk to a teller at a bank about how good or bad their teller systems are, and why they're still using whatever was built in the early 1980s, right? It's because the bank doesn't care. The bank really doesn't care how happy their tellers are or how productive they are. They're busy trying to phase them out in favor of online and ATMs. And so design in that situation somehow isn't a priority for the customers. I still think we have to do a great job, but sometimes we have to fight to do it.
Absolutely. Mace, I hope that answered your question.
Good. All right.
Awesome.
I'm going to let everybody go. I'm easy to find. If I can be of help, just reach out, drop me a note, drop me a LinkedIn. I'm all yours.
Thank you, Rich. I know you're an amazing, amazing human being. So thank you again for doing this, all the great work that you do. And it's lovely seeing you again after so many years.
Okay. Thanks. Take good care.
See ya.